This is Made for More Living with Johnny Jennings. Online at madeformorerealty.com.
So we are back with Nick Krautter, the author of The Golden Handoff, and a phenomenal book about how agents can acquire other agents' books of businesses, and how if you're looking to retire and escape the rat race a little bit, you can actually sell your books of businesses to other agents, similar to how dentists sell their practices. And what Nick and so in the first part of the show, we were talking about how to identify agents, how to partner with agents, kind of what that structure would look like. But now, let's say you found a couple of businesses, you've now done some partnerships. What's next on the horizon? Like, what's next in this game plan, Nick?
So I was really lucky early on in my career to get just awesome mentorship. And I think there was 5 different principal brokers at my firm that all had very different takes on how to run their businesses and how to meet clients and how to promote and market yourself and build a true business. And so there was different components of that. I remember Morgan Davis told me, he's like one of the top Buffini people ever. He said, work by referral. And I said, Morgan, I know 5 people in Portland. What do I do after I talk to those 5 people this morning? But it was good advice. You know, he said, you'll really enjoy this business longer if you work by referral, because it's more relational and people care about you, and you're not trying to just be the cheapest, fastest thing in the market. People want to work with you because they trust you. Another one, Randy Ingfer taught me how to do open houses, which was how I started to meet people before I was buying businesses. And then a couple other brokers were really good about, hey, don't eat, wear, or drive everything you make. Make sure you're investing in real estate along the way. And I was told, like, again, housing and apartments and everything was quite a bit cheaper in 2006 when I started. But they said, have the goal of buying a rental every year. And if you can't, try to buy one every 2 years, because some years are going to be better than others. But, live within your means, take care of your clients, actually have a database, because back then a lot of people didn't even have anything. They were kind of just winging it. And this is before iPhones too. That's how old I am. And so it was a little bit more difficult to manage that and you had to be more intentional. I think now there's so many tools to make it easy. If you're not doing it, you're really, really kind of missing out. So as I'm growing my business and building a database, I think number one, the biggest asset you have is your client list while you're running your business, because that is the lifeblood of how you connect and manage consistently with the people that know you and trust you and are going to refer you and work with you.
Yeah, it's your book. It's your book of business.
That's your number one asset.
Yep.
I don't care how much stuff you own. That's going to be the thing that creates the most revenue while you're working.
Yep.
But while you're working, you want to start building and start having the benefit of compounding growth from interest and from real estate and stocks and bonds. I don't think you should own just one category. I realized I had gotten very, very heavy into single family homes and plexes in Portland, Oregon. And so my whole business was there and all my rentals were there. And so I decided to start diversifying. And so I sold some of the rental houses and some land I owned, and I bought an office building in Boise. I had eventually bought my office building in Portland because we were running out of space. And so I set up bought my own building for my team. We had, 14 people on the team. So we had our own building for the team, which was really great. And I bought that and owned that. And then, I had nice houses, but I never had crazy nice houses. I would always try to find like a fixer in a good neighborhood and fix it up. I never had like a big showy mansion or anything on the river. So I'm kind of a believer that your house shouldn't be your most expensive asset. Not everyone agrees with that. There's some really cool tax benefits for primary residences. So I'm sure someone could teach you how to buy mansions and get rich by, trading every couple of years. But that's not the path I took. I didn't want to have that stress of a huge mortgage and a huge tax bill. So I'd say take care of your database, really try to engage and manage those relationships over time, and really truly care for your clients and try to find the solutions that are right for them when they're right for them. And then the second piece is, really try to make a little bit of extra money, more than you need every year, so that you have the resources to invest. I knew a lot of realtors that as soon as they had kind of covered their expenses for the year, they took their foot off the gas. And that's nice from like a work balance, life balance perspective. But the problem is, 20 years later, you haven't really gotten that much farther ahead
Yeah,
versus if you're able to like invest a little bit into a 401k and a little bit into, um, real estate, you know, over 20 years. I remember like kind of midway through my career, I think I realized one year that just the asset appreciation of all of my properties that I owned was significantly higher than my income for the year.
wow,
And I was like, wow, I'm making more money owning these properties. Now, that wasn't rental income. That's like appreciation plus
sure,
rental income. The rental income it's always more modest than you want it to be. You have to own a lot of real estate for that to cover everything. But um, yeah, it was a good asset appreciation year. I think the market had gone up, 15, 20% that year. And I had bought into some apartments and houses and, my personal home. And it wasn't a huge portfolio, but it was enough that it was like, wow, when you look at everything and multiply that by, add 20%, it was like $500,000. And I was just like, holy smokes. And and then you keep doing that and that number can keep going up. Now,
yeah.
real estate doesn't always go up, by the way. It does go down. And I
Oh my
think
gosh, I wish sellers would hear this. They just think it's a sure bet right now, but unfortunately in our market, I don't know how it is in La Quinta or Portland, but we are seeing some prices going down.
I can
But
say in my neighborhood, I think we've got more sellers than buyers right now. So usually that means that we got to see prices come down to meet expectations for buyers. And that's a healthy thing. I think you cannot have runaway growth without corrections because people don't have runaway unlimited earning potential increases. You're not
this
getting
is true.
bonuses and raises every single year forever either.
Yeah.
A lot of people right now in tech are getting laid off or they're not getting the bonuses they used to.
Hmm.
There's a lot of sectors that are struggling and or if they're doing okay, they're not growing really. And so if you've got you know, if you've got everything going up around you, but your income's not going up, you're getting further behind. So
Correct. But
um,
when you were investing, did you have like a target, like a percentage each year of your income that you wanted to put towards the future?
I was really just opportunistic. And I saw some other realtors that did an even better job than me at this, where they always had enough money in credit lines and cash aside that they could help someone solve a problem. And so um, there were times where I would have a buyer that had really negotiated super hard on a property and then decided it still wasn't a good enough deal for them and they walked away. But I'm thinking, holy smokes, I can't believe they're going to kill this deal. This is a home run. And so I would confirm with them, like, you're really out. This is not like you're trying to negotiate even harder and you want to come back in a week and try to get another 10 grand off. And they're like, no, screw that guy. That's not a good enough deal. And so I was like, okay, if you're really out, I just want to confirm you're not going to be mad if I go buy it. And I had that happen a couple times. And you know everything about the property, right? Because you've already done all the inspections and due diligence. And
Yeah.
if it's an investment property, you've done your financial analysis. And so um, I had it happen where I had sold an apartment building with extra land to a builder. They tried to get the city to approve a subdivision. They wouldn't do it. And they said, I got to get out of this thing because I can't keep it. They said, I'd like to keep it, but I can't keep it because I've got a hard money loan on it that's like super expensive. But it was a really good property, really good deal. And so I bought it with the intent of holding it long term. And then later on, I was actually eventually able to get that lot division. And then I was able to work with that builder on, gave them the first shot at buying that lot because they wanted to build the new house on that neighborhood.
Yeah.
It just took like 5 years to do it. And they didn't have 5 years at 20% interest to be able to pull that off. And yeah, just other things where you see things in the market. I would have people call me and try to pitch me a property for a builder or developer because we did a lot of apartment development. And I would explain why it wouldn't work for an apartment builder because of X, Y, and Z factors. But if they were willing to sell it for, X price, I'd buy it as just a rental house. And knowing that the future potential is limited, but if I got good enough price just as a rental house on a big lot, it would still work. So there's a lot of just opportunistic stuff. My favorite one is I remember my girlfriend at the time, we were both in real estate, and she was trying to buy this little rental house. And she ended up buying a different property, so she couldn't buy both of them. So she ended up, backing out of this one because it was just a smaller deal. And she said, but you should buy it because it's a really good deal. And I said, well, I really don't. I've already got this other project. I'm really busy. I don't really need another flip. But if they'd sell it for 150, I'll buy it. And I thought it was the most ridiculous offer, but it was in like a state, and the owners didn't care. And they said, yeah, if they can close in a week, we'll sell for 150. And it was worth like 180 or 190 even as a fixer. And this was like when the market was really strong and accelerating. And so I had people saying all the time, oh, there's no good deals. You can't find a good deal. And it's like, well, you're probably not asking the right questions, or you're not offering the right solution, because if you find a motivated seller and you can solve their problem and you can do it quickly, if time's more valuable than money to them and you can save them time and they'll give you the discount, then you're a great match, right? And then all of a sudden you come into a deal with equity. They get out of something that they don't want or need or can't maintain and move on because either, maybe they've got so much money it doesn't matter, or it's an inheritance, and so it's all free money anyway. They don't need to squeeze the last 5 or 10% out of everything.
Yeah.
So I would say that in any market, there's always really good opportunities if you're looking for them. And I was really picky. I did a couple flips, but I would say where I see people get into trouble is they try to convince themselves a deal works even though it really doesn't, because they just want to do a deal.
Yeah.
And I think you got to really be conservative, and I always tell people, like, you're going to be wrong about something in this deal. Something is going to happen. The market's going to shift. You're not going to get the rent you thought you were going to get. The renovation's going to cost more, take longer. You're going to be wrong about a couple things. And so you better have enough wiggle room that you don't have to be perfect and right about everything, because you very rarely are right about everything in any deal.
Sure. So when you were investing, were you doing like the Burr method where you were, flipping houses and then occasionally buying the rental with the profits, or like how did you build up your portfolio?
I would say I think I didn't do it in a real structured way like that. So it wasn't systematic. But I would say that doing flips is a really great way to raise capital, but it's very expensive tax-wise. Investing in real estate is very capital demanding. So you have to have a lot of cash to put down to do those. And even if you're doing owner carry stuff, it's still going to have some down payment requirement, which is expensive. And right now, debt is expensive, but the tax benefits are amazing long term, right? So you kind of have to decide what phase of your world you're in. Doing flips when you're making a ton of money every year is maybe not the best idea. So I had properties that I flipped, but I would keep for a couple years as a rental and then sell it, because I wanted to be able to do an exchange. And you can't flip a property and do a 1031 exchange. But if I buy a property and essentially flip it, but then rent it for 2 years, now I can do an exchange. And unless you're worried about the market shifting in that time frame, or unless you have a need for capital right now, then that can be a much better strategy. It really depends. I think if you're scrapping together money from family and friends to do your first flip, then yeah, sell it, take the profit, pay the taxes, and try to do a couple more, because that's really a business. So that's fine. You're running a business. And eventually, though, those people generally will say, gosh, I'd really love to have some asset appreciation and some long-term capital gains, as opposed to everything being just ordinary income all the time. And so I would say, again, flipping is a great way to raise capital and run a business and make money. Owning real estate is a really good, long-term is a really good way to get very wealthy. And then as you hold it longer, you can set up credit lines and refinances. And now you're not using hard money. You're not borrowing money. You can use your own money without paying like really high rates. So that's one thing I learned from one of my clients. He had built up a small portfolio of like 5 rental houses. And then when he did flips, he never had to do his hard money because he had his credit lines. So he would just, he was
the bank.
He was his own bank. And so basically he was able to use all these rental houses as a piggy bank, and he was getting really low rates, like half of hard money. And he didn't have to get appraisals. He didn't have to wait for anything. He didn't have to turn any paperwork in because they were already all set up. So when he wanted to buy a flip, he would just, tap 2 or 3 credit lines, move it all into a checking account, wire the money to title, and close. And then as soon as he was done, he'd pay all the credit lines back. So he wasn't no points. His interest cost was super low. And I was just like, it's interesting because it was his lender taught him how to do that. And his, lender put himself out of a job.
That's a good lender, though.
But, client for life, and he referred him a million people, just like I have like clients that do so many rentals, they end up getting their real estate license because they're doing so much. And I lose a client, but they're, still a good friend and they refer me people and all that. So, yeah, I didn't have a real structured plan. I would say 2018 or 2019, I really thought our market was going to really start to slow down. And I think I was right, but COVID happened.
Yeah.
So going back to my statement about you're going to be wrong about some things, I sold a lot of properties right then when if I had waited 2 years, they would have been worth quite a bit more. But, that money got reinvested in other places and in other assets. And so I got that appreciation in other places. So it all works out as long as you invest in things you believe in and have a long-term plan.
Well, I love that. So you're talking about investing, and then eventually, though, you had enough, money invested, enough assets, enough cash flow where you're like, hey, I don't have to necessarily run this real estate business anymore. And you started thinking about selling it.
Yeah. So, I'd been on the buy side of this equation the whole time. And I used to tell my agents, it's always good to sell your own house once in a while just to remember how stressful and exciting and
How
scary
horrible
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important because it's easy to get emotionally detached from that because we have to be. Our job is to help people manage that. And we've got multiple people. And hopefully, if you're doing good, you're selling multiple houses a month. So it becomes very familiar and easy. But when you do it for yourself, it's stressful again. Um, but yeah, so I did it in two phases. So I was doing commercial and investment real estate with my team and also residential for a very long time. And our commercial and investment development side started to get really, really, really big. And we were doing very well. And I was really interested in expanding that and focusing on it. And I was hoping someone on my team would take over leadership for the residential book of business and really manage it because I was managing both and they're very different. You can't manage and market to people the same way when you're those two different groups, right? And so it didn't work out that anyone on the team wanted to take over the leadership role and take over that. And so we had to look outside.
What do you think that is? Like, if somebody it just seems like that's a great opportunity. Were they, like, was it just not a good fit? Like, who would be a good fit for somebody to take over that type of a role for somebody, like in your business?
It's tricky. So, your top agent who's willing to call everyone and hustle and wants to make the most money possible might be concerned about taking time away from production because keep in mind, you are taking time away from production. So
yeah,
if you can create, a profit share or some kind of revenue share thing that helps fill that gap. So their production is going to go down, but then they're going to get a management payment or fee or a percentage of sales. You can kind of bridge that gap. I think too, for some people, like for me, I'm a much better salesperson than a manager. And I did it out of necessity. But if I had found someone to partner with that was really good at management and HR, and I just stayed on the sales side, I think it would have been a better situation for my happiness and for growth. But I was just at the beginning, didn't have the resources to do that. And so I just kind of took over and did it. And I did a lot of classes and had accountability friends. And I kind of like struggled my way through it, but it wasn't natural. And so I think some salespeople, they just don't want to be on the management side. But I think the truth is most people just don't want to do the work.
Okay.
I was watching Alex Hormozy, and I think there's a statement like only 5% of people are able to retire without family or government support.
Wow. Only 5?
And I think that that's right. I think that that's accurate in my experience. And
Wow.
so if you extrapolate that across like our industry, right? 1 out of 20 agents is going to be the one that's willing to take over and take the responsibility and stay late at work and be the one to like deal with the problems and the headaches and the stress of all of the extra things you have to do to manage a business versus just being an agent.
Yeah.
Because when people are agents like, oh, I'm running a small business. Well, if it's just you, not really. Once you add payroll and legal and HR and accounting and bookkeeping, and you have to set up, ACH accounts and 401ks and health plans. Now you're buying a building, managing a building, once you're looking at 30 to 40K a month in overhead and, a bunch of staff that are paid whether you close deals or not. Now you're running a real business, and it's not for everyone. You don't need to do it. There's a lot of people I know that are fantastic solo agents that do very well, and they don't want to build a big team or business. So I think that, the people I had on the team either wanted to focus on production or, they just didn't want to add the work, even if there was a little bit more money. And I think that's a mistake, but that's because I think differently. And I think like someone that wants to grow a business. And so the thing I want to share that was kind of wild when I was looking to sell, because originally it was just the residential book of business. It was about 600 people. Half the people I called about buying my business and managing it were confiding in me that they were actually looking to retire pretty soon too.
Interesting.
Because I'm calling my peers, right? We've all been in the business 15, 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
And so they're all successful. They're all good. I was, calling people I knew that would do a good job, that were successful, that had good teams, that, built relationships, that work by referral. And so, a big portion of them they were looking for the exit door pretty soon. Another group of them had a different model. My model was just to get as big as you can and still provide the level of service. And that was kind of our throttle. If we can't make the calls and do the work in the way we want, we're going to slow down our growth. And we did that. I stopped buying businesses after about 6 because I couldn't hire enough agents. We had 14 people, and that was we were at a sweet spot where we were at capacity and everyone was successful, but I couldn't really add 50 more clients per agent and expect them to be able to handle it. It would have been too much. So we very thoughtfully stopped growing for a while, at least at that pace. We still grew with referrals and sign calls and internet leads and things like that came in kind of organically, but I wasn't going to go buy 300 or 400 person client lists and add that on top because we were already at capacity.
Sure. So
a lot of the agents I talked to said, well, I only want to have 300 clients and I don't want to have 600 more people to call and talk to. And some people didn't want to have to call people they didn't know personally. They were okay calling their client list of people they knew, but the idea of calling my list, even with my endorsement, seemed outside of their comfort zone. And so it was actually a younger team that I ended up partnering with, and each agent on that team would get basically responsibility for about 200 clients.
Okay.
And so that's how we did it in a way that was setting them up for success, and for them to see this as a really great opportunity for growth, but not such an overwhelming task that they just kind of collapsed. Because, too big of an opportunity can be a problem too. Because I think everyone understood that this was a good business decision and it was going to make them money. And it was probably better than buying leads and all these other things. But now you've got to call 600 more people a year and manage those relationships. And if those people and those teams already feel overwhelmed and understaffed, they should say no to that. Because until you solve your staff problem and your capacity problem, you don't want to add more people because you're going to just fumble the ball and you're going to miss out on the opportunity, and it's going to be bad for both the retiring agent and the adopting agent.
Absolutely. So when you ended up selling that business to the 3 agents, how was it structured? Was it exactly how you outline in the book? Was it how many years was it? What did that look like?
We did it based on a partial handoff model, which is just a normal 25% referral fee as long as I'm engaged and helping market and prospect to the database. And then if I get to a point where I'm like, don't call me, don't bug me, just good luck, then it would just trigger a 3-year phase out.
Okay.
But right now, I love talking to clients. I love helping people and answering questions. And if I could just do a couple hours of client consultations every morning, I'd be super happy, and then let someone else go do the CMA and do the marketing for the property and the negotiation. And that's kind of what I had done with my team, was built it up to basically I was doing a lot of the lead generation and client communication. And then once they're ready to look at houses, they would connect with a showing agent or a buyer's agent. And on the listing side, I had someone that all they did was list residential properties, and they were incredibly good at it. And so once they were ready to do that, they would connect. I would go to some of the appointments, but not usually.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm still, basically I've outlined my top 100 people that I've got deep relationships with. And so that's the people I'm going to call and check in with and see, kind of just have a conversation. I'm not really selling anything.
Just maintaining the relationship.
Yeah, you're a person, I'm a person. How's life? What's going on? What
Yeah.
what are you dreaming about in the future? And if there's some real estate stuff that's going to happen, then let's get that on the calendar or figure out the details on that. And that just naturally comes up.
Yeah.
I randomly just got like 3 referrals last week for some apartment buildings, and it was all estate stuff. People are all these baby boomers. Unfortunately, the baby boomer generation is, handing the torch over to the younger generation. And
Correct.
So stay engaged with those folks,
Yeah.
ask about people's grandparents, help solve those problems, because people are going to need to have co-housing situations, ADUs with grandma in it, in-home care. This is going to be a big, big thing over the next 10 years. And, selling the house so they can fund, more active care or
Mm-hmm.
a retirement community. There's a lot more levels to that now, which I think is really great. But I think that that's the opportunity for the next couple years personally, really for the next 10 years. Because those baby boomers are going to either be, the kids are going to be inheriting the properties and deciding whether or not to keep them. Or one of the people that called me, they lost their spouse and they've
Mm-hmm.
been together 50 years, and grandma doesn't want to manage the apartment building anymore. That was something her husband did, and
She doesn't need to do it. Or
she doesn't need to do it. It's
Yeah.
time to. She's tired of painting and fixing stuff and dealing with property management.
Yeah.
And she's gonna exit out of this and put the money wherever, probably just into her accounts to pay for living expenses. And
And
keep
that's
in
it.
mind,
Yeah.
some people want to like have their legacy go to the next generation, but a lot of people, they own the real estate so they can sell it one day and buy the Corvette and the RV and the beach house, and they're going to do that, and God bless them. I mean, 50 years of appreciation.
They put in the work.
Exactly. Use it for what you want.
Well, hey, Nick, we're running short on time, but I did just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. What is the best way if people have questions or if they're wanting to buy your book? Like, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, the best way to stay on top of resources and get access to a bunch of tools in the book is goldenhandoff.com. So anything we're offering with coaching or masterminding or any resources you need to do this are going to be a great starting point. And then that'll link to Amazon, where you can get the new version of the Golden Handoff and also the workbook. And so thanks so much for having me on. It's great to talk to you. And it means a lot to hear you tell the story of hearing the book and then implementing it. Because, when you're writing a book, it's a very lonely experience. And you're like, gosh, I hope people actually use this, because it takes a lot of time to write a book and took a lot of time away from much more fun things to do it. So I'm always happy to hear stories like yours. So congratulations.
Man, it changed my life. So thank you.